season I've been testing and reviewing the Insta360 X4 camera, and here are some of my tips and tricks for when using the X4 for Snowsports. Firstly, for the settings, the X4 camera has a ski mode as one of its presets and defaults. Broadly speaking, I leave it in this setting, which is 5.7K 60 frames per second, and this will do the job for the vast majority of your needs for Snowsports. The frame rate of 60 frames per second enables you to edit some really cool slow-mo effects in post, as well as being the best setting for really fast moving objects such as skiers and snowboarders. But if I know that I won't be doing any slow-mo segments in the editing, then sometimes I will change it to 8K at 30 frames per second, especially if I'm wanting to capture big, expansive, scenic shots, because of course 8K is the superior image quality. So you're wanting to capture some really wide-angle, big stuff, then you want the best quality footage. And for that, you don't need the increased frame rate of 60 frames per second. But most of the time, I'll keep it in 5.7K anyway, because my editing software, I can only export in 1080p. I have to pay to export in 4K anyway, so there's no material advantage to shooting in 8K most of the time, like I say, unless I'm doing big, expansive, scenic shots, because ultimately the export image quality won't be any better if shot in 8K versus 5.7K. Now, of course, you can edit in the Insta360 Studio itself, and that enables you to export in 4K, but personally, I don't like using that to edit my long videos. It's just not as user-friendly as the editing software that I otherwise use. Of course, you do need to change the settings for which lens caps you're using, or indeed, if you're not using any at all. When I first started using this, I always used the lens caps. These are the standard lens caps which come with my camera. So you have to choose that setting to get the optimum image quality. But I've actually found that when using the lens caps, you can have a big problem with condensation on the inside of the lenses, because no matter how carefully you place the lens caps, you're always going to trap some moisture between the lenses and the lens caps, because there's always humidity in the air. Unless you're fitting them in a vacuum, there'll always be some humidity in the air. And then if you're getting temperature contrasts, maybe strong sun, maybe very humid conditions, the inside of the lens caps can and will steam up, and this can really affect the image quality of your footage. So this was a fairly major problem on one of the days when I was using this camera. Virtually half the day the footage was unusable because the lens caps steamed up. So yeah, 99% of the time, if I'm shooting for Snowsports, I will leave the lens caps off and just make sure that I'm careful with the camera. The exception being, of course, if I'm giving the camera to a friend to shoot, because then if I scratch my lenses, it's my fault. If someone else scratches my lenses, I'm pretty pissed off. So I always make sure to protect them with the lens caps if I'm giving the camera to someone else. As for the sound settings, in the vast majority of instances, just leaving it in auto noise cancelling will do the job, unless you're intending to be talking to the camera as you ski, in which case you might want to use active noise cancelling, or indeed even directional noise cancelling if you're moving the camera around a lot. For the majority of the time, auto will do the job just fine. And then, how to actually use the camera when you're skiing? Well, the simplest method is, of course, to use the invisible selfie stick. This is the action invisible selfie stick, which is a bit lighter, a bit stronger than the standard one. The standard one will do the job just fine. And you can just simply use it short handle like this. It will do the job. You can zoom in and out in post-production while editing anyway, but if you want to get the best shots, you are going to need to extend the selfie stick partially or fully. That then means if you want to capture your full body while skiing, you can do so without warping all the horizons. Because if you zoom in and out during post-production where you've been shooting with the camera on the short handle, the scenery around you will become very, very warped. Now, you can ski quite simply holding the camera in one hand, holding both poles in the other hand. I've done this on a number of occasions. It works perfectly fine. It then gives you lots of freedom for what you do with the selfie stick. Spin to the side, up and down. So that gives you loads of choice for moving the camera around as you ski. But of course, you can also use one of these. This is the selfie stick ski pole mount. So this attaches anywhere you want on the ski pole with a simple clamp mechanism. I've left the Allen key at home so I can't show you now. And then the selfie stick screws into here. And that enables you to ski fairly naturally, holding the ski pole in your hand with a selfie stick attached to the pole. And that gives a much better, much more natural looking shot. Of course, it will feel a little bit weird trying to ski with the selfie stick attached to your ski pole, but one thing I found, a little trick to make this feel slightly better, is if you have collapsible ski poles such as these, which you can use for ski touring, I like to collapse the ski pole. Yes, you are losing some of the counterweight when you're skiing, but that means you can move the hand much more freely with a selfie stick attached without needing to worry about the bottom of the pole dragging along the piste or catching in the powder. So yeah, if you are using the ski pole mount, consider using touring ski poles and collapsing the ski pole. So that's how you get those really cool third person shots looking back at you as you're skiing down the slope, holding the selfie stick out in front of you. But of course you can also use it as a follow cam as well. Again, simply you can just turn the selfie stick round in your hand, hold it behind you while you're skiing with both poles in the other hand, or you can simply turn the ski pole mount round on your ski pole so it's pointing backwards as well. So again, that can give some really cool follow cam footage. Just need to be careful, especially if you're not using the lens guards, that the camera isn't dragging in the snow. So that's how you best use a selfie stick while skiing, but arguably it's even better when snowboarding, because you haven't got to worry about what you're doing with your ski poles, so everything looks much more natural and much more fluid anyway. So again, of course, imagine I'm a regular rider, which I am. You can hold it out in front of you in your front hand. Again, you can still move it to the side, up and down to play around with the angles. But even better, arguably, is hold it in your rear hand, so my right hand as a regular rider. And that gives an amazing shot from the side on, so you can get really cool plumes of powder as you're skiing past. Again, you can move the camera side to side to artificially create some movement in the shot. Equally, just like skiing, you can turn it round in your hand, hold it behind you as well. And again, that gives some really amazing follow cam footage. Finally, you can stick the selfie stick somewhere in your rucksack, either attached to the pole straps on the outside, or if your rucksack's full enough with equipment, shoving it on the inside. And then, if you extend the camera upwards, this effectively looks like you've got a drone following you directly above, which again gives some really cool footage, some really cool camera angles. Now, the pole will wobble around quite a lot in your rucksack, but the image stabilisation on the Insta360 X4 is so good, it won't affect the quality of your footage too much. Sure, you yourself will look like you're moving around quite a lot, but the horizon and everything that you're skiing down will still look pretty stable. But a little trick to improve the stability is simply to stuff your rucksack with some padding, be it a big bulky down jacket, maybe ropes, whatever you've got. Really fill it out, so that means that the selfie stick is held as securely as possible inside the rucksack. And then the less wobble you've got on the stick, the better the image quality will be. You can also use it with a chest mount. Now, you won't see very many people using a 360 type camera with a chest mount. It's much more popular with a GoPro type camera. But actually, 360 cameras work really well on a chest mount as well. I've found that the footage looks best when you have the camera sticking pretty much straight out in front of you like this. You can have it tilting slightly up or slightly down. Again, it can be just as good, it will just change the camera angle ever so slightly, but there's no need to have it sitting flush like that. Indeed, you're limiting your options in post-production even more if you've got it sitting flush with you. Whereas if you have it sticking out straight in front, there's much more scope to be turning around and spinning the image, spinning the field of view in post-production. The big advantage of using the camera on a chest mount versus a helmet mount, in my opinion, is that it makes the image look much more busy. It looks like there's much more drama going on as you're skiing, because you'll see your skis moving around under you, hands and poles coming in and out of the shot. Everything looks much more busy, much more dynamic. So even if you are skiing relatively slowly, it makes it look like there's just so much more happening. Whereas if you've got the camera on your helmet and you're just cruising through the trees in basically a straight line, nothing's happening really, other than the trees are just moving past you. So yeah, I actually quite like using it on a chest mount, because it just creates so much more drama in the shot. Now, most people you'll see using any kind of action camera, they'll be using it on a helmet mount somewhere or another. Now, I never actually got around to using this camera on my helmet, as I blew my knee earlier in the season and been out of action for most of the season. But a little tip that I've seen from other people is if you are mounting this on your helmet for skiing, the best option is to have it somewhere near the front of the helmet and angle it out at 45 degrees. A lot of people having it sticking directly up, but that actually limits the options in post-production. If you move the camera slightly forward and tilt it down 45 degrees, it means you get a much better angle when you spin the image round to look back at you, compared to if you have the camera sitting straight up above you. Straight up is good for things like paragliding, but yeah, for skiing and snowboarding, you want the camera slightly forward at about 45 degrees. So that's how I like to shoot with the X4 camera. Of course, most of the magic with any kind of 360 camera comes in post-production, in the editing. So a few tips I found for editing Snowsports footage from the X4 camera, which will probably apply to the X3 and other 360 cameras as well. So first of all, if you're shooting in ski mode, by default it shoots in ultra, whereas manually in post-production you can change from ultra to mega to de-warp and back again. So I find that's really effective for just creating a bit of extra drama, a bit of action going on around you, because the stabilisation in this camera is so good, especially with the horizon lock on, that none of the scenery looks like it's moving at all, which in some instances is desirable. But if you are shooting long segments, maybe you're skiing a long, relatively flat piece, or you've got a really long powder run where you're going mostly in a straight line, if nothing's really moving, it actually looks quite boring. So I quite like changing from de-warp to ultra and back again. So the movement of the horizon and everything else around you just creates a bit of extra drama, a bit of extra interest in the footage. And this is especially effective if you do it whilst also panning around with the camera. So if you've got the camera looking at you, you're definitely going to want it in ultra or mega. Then as I pan round, I like to switch it to de-warp as it moves forward, because then you get a much more natural look. And again, as it's changing from ultra or mega to de-warp, everything just kind of moves and changes shape, just adds a bit of extra interest to the footage. Another trick, much in the same vein, is simply to zoom in and zoom out in post-production. That again creates a bit of extra drama, a bit of extra urgency in your shot. And if you are moving relatively slowly, it can make it look like you're moving much faster. Or indeed, if you're moving very fast, it can make it look like you're going into slow-mo and back out again, even though you're not changing the speed of the camera settings. You're simply zooming in and zooming out with the image. And of course, again, that works really well as you're panning the camera round. You can zoom out as you're panning forward, zoom in as you're panning back to you again, and vice versa. And it just creates extra drama, extra interest in the footage. Of course, the classic thing that virtually everyone does, and with good reason, is simply just to pan the camera image around. That can either be done rapidly or be a gradual pan, depending on what you're wanting to show. But again, you're changing the horizon, you're changing the scenery around you, so it creates extra interest in the image, even if you're not doing much yourself. But also, of course, if you're wanting to show what it is you're skiing, and really show, maybe you've done a big drop, maybe you've just skied off a cornice or something, you want to be looking forward as you're doing the thing, and then as you ski past it, pan back to show what's going on behind you, so you can really get a picture of just how big the thing you just dropped off is, or how amazing the jump was, or the cornice was. So yeah, panning round, forwards and backwards, even without adjusting any of the other settings, again, is a really good option in post-production. Last but not least, one of the best editing hacks really is to use the deep track function. And this works best if you're deep tracking somebody else rather than deep tracking you. So especially if you're holding the camera on a selfie stick somehow, you can then have it track your friend if you're skiing alongside each other, or indeed you could be skiing a long way away from each other, but if the image is tracking them from a distance, it just adds a lot of interest. And that'll mean that then the horizon is moving with them. It's focused on the image is focused on them rather than having the horizon locked and everything stuck as it is. So again, just a little trick, if you're skiing with other people, it could be even more effective if you're skiing with several people. Deep track one person for a few seconds, then deep track someone else, and then pan to yourself for a little bit, go back to the other person again, and deep track them again. So yeah, if you're skiing with other people around you, it looks really cool if you deep track the other person rather than focusing particularly on you. So there you have it. There are some of my tips and tricks for if you're shooting with the new Insta360 X4 camera to really get the best out of it for snow sports, be it skiing or snowboarding. If you are interested in buying the Insta360 X4 or indeed any other Insta360 products, if you use my discount code, which I'll include in the description and on the screen somewhere here, you'll receive a free accessory as well. And these are genuine, useful accessories, not just mugs or key rings. Some packages might even come with a free selfie stick. So yeah, if you are interested in buying any Insta360 products, then please use my discount code. Thanks for watching and enjoy your skiing.